Good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes. My name is Salvador Cicero. It's my privilege to welcome you all on this historic day to the 11th Ward. Thank you, of course, to the Shelby brothers for always hosting us and opening this up to all of us, its residents. Again, my name is Salvador Cicero. I am a proud resident of the 11th Ward. I've been here in Bridgeport for about 12 years now. And I am very, very happy that the mayor decided to handle the appointment in this way. I had the great privilege of serving with this amazing group of volunteers. I wanted to acknowledge them. Alderman Michelle Harris, who served as our chairperson for this committee, Grace Chan McKibben, and Jamie Trecker. We all worked in a consensus basis. We worked very amicably. I wanted to just briefly tell you about the process that we followed. When the mayor asked us to review the applicants and make some recommendations to her, what we did was look for three things: governmental experience, community involvement, and leadership skills. We had 27 applicants, and of course, I also want to take the opportunity to thank all of you who applied for this position. It really shows the interest that there is in our ward, and I can tell you that all of the applicants were people with an excellent heart who wanted to serve the public. After we each individually reviewed the applications, we had a number of meetings. We narrowed it down to a few less candidates so that we could sit down with them in person, so we held in-person interviews. We had lengthy conversations with each candidate, and at the end of that process, then we made the recommendations to the mayor. And of course, today we know that she chose Nicole. You'll get a chance to talk to her in a little bit. I just wanted to say that we hope that everybody will come together, support Nicole, and help us get the 11th Ward back to where it needs to be. Without further ado, let me introduce our mayor, Lori Lightfoot.
I feel excited, but also nervous because this is such an important moment. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. It's my great pleasure to be here to announce and introduce the person I've selected as the next alderperson for the 11th Ward. But before I introduce her, I want to remind everyone what the process is we took to get to this moment. We put together a fair, community-driven, and democratic process to fill the vacant aldermanic seat. Knowing just how important it is for aldermen to reflect the lived experiences and be able to connect with the residents in the ward. We opened the applications to anyone who lived in the 11th Ward for at least 1 year prior to the appointment. Someone who has proven to be a valued public servant and has demonstrated their commitment to service, and is able to passionately advocate on behalf of 11th Ward residents. As you just heard, 27 applicants answered the call, and we have to say a special thanks to every one of them. It's a big deal to put yourself out in that way, and I just am grateful for the level of enthusiasm that we saw across this community. Their applications were reviewed by the committee, which included 11th Ward residents, as well as our chairperson, Alderwoman Michelle Harris. And following their review and interviews with each applicant, the group put together a final slate of candidates for me to review. And after careful consideration, I have made, I think, the only choice, and that is Nicole Lee, who's with us here today. I want Nicole to soak in every moment of this praise. It doesn't come often, and the days will get tough. But take this moment, put it in your heart, and when the days are rough, remember and reflect upon the faces of the people who are here, you will need them on your journey, who love and support you, have been with you every step of the journey. So well done. Nicole will be the first woman and first person of Chinese American descent to represent the 11th Ward in its history. take a moment to reflect upon this historic appointment. History tells us that Chinese immigrants first started coming to Chicago in the 1870s. But like their counterparts in other parts of the country, the Chinese were not always welcomed here in Chicago or in the United States. Anti-Chinese sentiments arising from racism and fights over jobs led to the passage of laws that ultimately banned Chinese immigration to the United States and made life for those who remained that much more difficult. Laws like the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, followed by the Geary Act, banned Chinese immigration in total to the United States for much of the decades leading into and the early decades of the 20th century. And the truth is, it wasn't until in 1943 that Congress repealed the exclusions on immigration, but still kept very strict quotas on the number of Chinese that could lawfully come into the United States. But despite these legalized and systemic barriers to the Chinese community and our country and our city, we know this. The Chinese community here persevered, bonded together, and thrived. So with that backdrop on the sad chapters of this history, we are here today to proclaim a new day for our city. Nicole comes to us most recently from United Airlines, our hometown airline, a great company and a great civic leader. She served as the Director of Social Impact Optimization and Community Engagement. That's a fancy title for saying she was tasked with doing good. She was tasked with rising up and representing United Airlines whenever there was a crisis, whenever there was a need, and there are countless examples of the great work that she did, quietly in many instances, because United wasn't asking for praise or glory, but just to be a good civic leader, and she became the consciousness of the company in making sure that the community of Chicago and across the country was well served when there was a time of need. It's a job that she told me, and I think you all know who know her, she loves dearly. But it didn't quite satisfy her desire to serve those directly in her community, many of whom have been her neighbors for years. Nicole was born and raised and still lives now in Chinatown, a neighborhood that has become an integral part of her identity and who she is, surrounded by other working-class immigrant families with very similar stories to that of her own family. Nicole grew up in a supportive environment with people who understood her experiences. Though having that kind of environment is important, she found that she most connected to her community when she began attending CPS schools, where she was able to forge lifelong relationships with students and teachers, many of whom didn't look like her, but despite their diversity and differences of experience, embraced and supported and nurtured her. This would solidify her passion to create and be a part of diversity and inclusion experiences. Throughout college and her early career, this passion only grew stronger and stronger and was eventually combined with a deeper desire to serve those in need and pave her way toward success. Nicole has lived a life of purpose. She has lived a life that will resonate with many Chicagoans inside and outside of the 11th Ward when they come to know her story. She's a single mom with 2 sons, a devoted and loving daughter, and a friend to many. Like many of us, she's been knocked down over the course of her life, had to endure tough times, but like the values she's instilled in her own children, she's picked herself up, taken accountability, and persevered. Nicole represents what is good and best about our great city, and she has my admiration and my support. Nicole Lee will explain in more detail shortly, is determined to bring the 11th Ward residents together as one community, rather than a disparate ethnic groups who all happen to live inside the ward's boundaries. And let's take a look at the 11th Ward. When we look at the numbers, it tells an important story of diversity. As of 2021, 42.7% of residents identified as white, 37.5% identify as Asian, 24.9% as Hispanics, and 5% as Black. This is a rare level of diversity in an automatic ward, as I think many of you know and appreciate. And we need to do more to foster that diversity and to continue to do everything we can to talk about community and bring people together. This is exactly the kind of community cohesion that the pandemic has compelled us to really lean into across our city, and the exact kind of unity we all need in other communities if we are to realize a more equitable and inclusion future for our city. The 11th Ward is also core to Chicago's economic recovery and engine. For example, there are over 103 manufacturing businesses in the 11th Ward, which employ over 4,000 people. Manufacturing, as you know, is one of our core strengths, and it has been for decades, and was identified by our COVID-19 Recovery Task Force as a key industry to invest in order to bounce back from this pandemic. The 11th Ward is also home to 913 businesses and approximately 43 restaurants. It has over 52,000 residents who have a collective spending power of almost $3 billion annually. Given this, and that Chicago's Chinatown is the only one in the country that's expanding, the 11th Ward deserves a leader who will not only build upon this economic momentum, but do everything that she can to bring residents together and make the community even stronger than it's ever been before. And I know and have every confidence that Nicole is such a leader. Her passion, confidence, and commitment to collaboration, on top of her more than 20 years of leadership and strong track record of service to the 11th Ward and Asian American communities, makes her deeply qualified for this role. I'm incredibly confident in her ability to serve. Nicole, thank you so much for stepping up to fill this incredibly important role in this moment, and for being such an integral part of your community for so much of your life. I look forward to working closely with you as you advocate on behalf of your ward and make sure that the needs of the residents you serve are reflected in city government. Imagine that. Now, last thing I'll say, and then I will invite Amy Moore, Nicole's principal from her elementary school, to come and speak. As we are in this moment, I am confident that somewhere in Chicago, a Chinese or Asian American child is going to see her face, is going to hear her voice, and know that the seeming impossible is actually possible in Chicago. That child and children will know that through hard work, determination, in our Chicago, we continue to break down barriers and open up doors of opportunity to create a more equitable and inclusive Chicago for the betterment of all. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell, I'm extremely proud, excited, and really, really beaming with pride in this moment. There'll be more that we will say in the coming days, but again, I want to reiterate to all, Nicole has my total confidence, and more importantly, we will make sure that she is set up and supported for success. And with that, I'd invite Principal Moy to come and say a few words.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here as we celebrate Mayor Lightfoot's choice for the 11th Ward Alderman. My name is Catherine Amy Moy Davis, and I am the proud principal of Haynes Elementary School in Chinatown. I've known Nicole Lee since we were young children growing up in Chinatown, first in elementary school and then in high school. Proud product of Whitney Young. Go Dolphins. And then later when her children attended Haynes School, one that is sitting right in front. I've witnessed firsthand the leadership skills and passion that makes Nicole the best choice for this role. Not only does she do this as an advocacy for members of our community, but she does it with what a passionate leader must do. encourage others to use their voices as well. As chairman of our local school council at Haynes Elementary School, Nicole fought for equity and inclusion. She spoke for every child in our community, regardless of where they came from. Most importantly, she did not waver when she met resistance. As a leader, she is gifted in listening and communicating at all levels. She will put these skills to work by listening and engaging everyone in the community. I know she will be responsive to the concerns and make every decision with the community in mind. I also know that the 11th Ward will benefit from her leadership and ability to connect with people. As the first Asian American woman to serve on the City Council, Nicole will be a reminder to everyone that if you can see it, you can be it. I can't wait for my students at Haynes to see themselves represented in the City Council and know that Nicole is advocating for them. This has been a long time coming for the Asian American community in the city of Chicago, and I am proud to welcome Ms. Nicole Lee to the podium to say a few words.
Wow. I'm going to soak it, every bit of it in, Mayor Lightfoot. Amy, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, for your kind introduction, and most of all for trusting me with this incredible responsibility. And thank you all for being here. I'm just going to take one more second to soak it in. My mouth is super dry because I'm a little bit nervous. Hello, everybody. My name is Nicole Lee, and I want to introduce myself to you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I think about the 11th Ward of Chicago. The 11th Ward is Chicago. If you want to look for any other ward that resembles or represents Chicago, this is the one. The 11th Ward's earliest residents dug canals, they butchered hogs, and they riveted steel that built this city. The 11th Ward has long been a gateway for immigrants from around the world to build a new life in the greatest city in the world. People from most of these disparate cultures and ethnicities come to the 11th Ward to raise their families in communities that value love, integrity, grit, and service. In the 11th Ward, our parks, our churches, our parks and our churches are where we congregate with our families and with our neighbors, celebrating and mourning the people that we love. The 11th Ward values hard work and labor. It's home to people who pave our roads, teach our children, stock our shelves, and patrol our streets. In the 11th Ward, our communities celebrate and carry traditions of arts, as you can see, and culture from a time and place that our children probably won't ever really know. And in the 11th Ward, we don't stop believing. We're grinders and winning ugly. That's what we believe in. In the 11th Ward, we embrace this really rich and deep history, but we also look ahead. We're a community of the future. We're proud of where we were raised, because that's a Chicago thing. You always talk about what neighborhood you're from, Bridgeport strong. We're proud of where we're raised, but in the 11th Ward, we're even more proud of the communities that we're building for our children. The 11th Ward made me who I am, which is why it's such a tremendous honor to receive this appointment. I recognize that this is a historic moment for our city, and especially for our ward. I will be the first ever woman and Chinese American to serve as 11th Ward Alderman. I'm just going to say that again because I like the sound of it. I will be the first ever woman and Chinese American to serve as the 11th Ward Alderman of the city of Chicago. Thank you for giving me that little extra. I could not be more proud to represent the people that came before me, the communities that raised me, and the neighborhoods that my boys are growing up in today. But the 11th Ward is also a community that has struggled with divisions. And I want my sons and their friends to live in a world that is inclusive, equitable, and supports success for all of our residents. I want the residents of the 11th Ward to feel good about leaning on one another, unified and connected in our shared values. In the 11th Ward, we all want safe streets. Actually, we want safe streets in the entire city. It's not just here in the 11th Ward. We want to have great public schools for our kids and have opportunities for success for all residents of the neighborhoods. I want us to move forward together and take on challenges as a united 11th Ward. I grew up in the 11th Ward, in the Chinatown piece of it. If you look at the map, it's like a shoulder. I was born and raised there. I still live there in the same building that my grandparents bought, where my parents live to this day. It's really handy to have your mom cooking for you every night downstairs. And my two sons now represent the 4th generation of Lees to live in this house. When I was growing up in Chinatown, Chinatown was a community of immigrants, just like it is still today. So we continue to get a great influx of immigrants into our Chinatown, as Mayor Lightfoot mentioned in her remarks earlier. And as a young girl, I went to an all-Catholic, all-Chinese school. And really, we kept to ourselves in this community that was pretty insulated and safe. It was our little bubble. But after the 3rd grade, my parents broke the news to me that I would be transferring to another school. I was deathly afraid, actually. I was told that I would be moving to Mark Sheridan Academy in Bridgeport, way on the other side of the viaduct. So if you know Bridgeport and you know how Chinatown, the rest of the neighborhood are divided, there's a big viaduct there. And it's there where I met people from Bridgeport and Canaryville and Armour Square, back of the yards and beyond. And I learned that my neighborhood in the 11th Ward was only part of the rich diversity around me. I feared people that didn't look like me. I actually thought if anybody found out I was Catholic, they might, do something to me, because that's how naive I was as a 9-year-old. That experience at Mark Sheridan opened my world, and I'm so thrilled because I look over here and 3 of my friends, my classmates from Mark Sheridan, class of 1988. I can't believe I just said that out loud. Vanetta and Rosendo and Lisa. Thank you. Thank you. I would be remiss not to mention a couple of teachers who couldn't be here today. They have since retired and are living their best lives on vacation. Donna Egan, if you're watching this in Paris where you are, I hope you're having a fabulous time. And Tony Norrell in New York City. I shared with the mayor that Mark Sheridan really sort of started my leadership and origin story in the ward. Donna Egan was my gym teacher. And she gave me my first leadership role, and it was as a safety patrol guard, and then made me the captain of the safety patrol. It became a Lee family legacy. My brother Darren was also a captain, and so is Evan, who couldn't be here today. But I really would be remiss in not mentioning how integral my relationship with her was, and she is a dear friend to this day. I actually call her by her first name. It took a little while to not call her Mrs. Egan, but I'm very comfortable in that now because she is a dear, dear friend. So thank you all for being here. That experience continued on when I went to Whitney Young. Dolphins in the room. Go ahead, raise your hands. Dolphins. All right. I made some of my dearest friends, friends who I refer to more as family or maybe framly. Whitney Young opened the world to me, and it was an incredible experience, but it also didn't come without a good dose of reality. When I was there, I truly learned the value of inclusion. It was there that for the first time, I was often the only Asian American in the room. So that experience isn't going into city council won't really bother me so much. I've done this before. To this day, I am grateful, so grateful, that I was able to go to CPS schools where I could branch out and grow, and I can learn the value of inclusion and the beauty of other people. It shaped a great deal of who I am and my desire to bring the 11th Ward together. I went on to earn my bachelor's degree in public policy at Indiana University, and then a master's in public policy at the University of Chicago. But even with these degrees, I didn't really dream of a political career. But I felt a call to serve, that was inspired by role models all around me, including my father. In my 20 years in the private and nonprofit sectors, I've worked in global community engagement and corporate social responsibility. I'm extremely proud of the roles that I've played in supporting communities in Chicago and across the country and around the world in their most desperate times of need, from hurricanes to earthquakes to mass shootings, and most recently with refugees. Among the most rewarding parts of my job, those are the ones that I count deepest in my heart and I probably will miss the most. While everybody else is watching on television as things unfold, my team and I at United are able to directly impact those in the greatest of need. And I thank Susie Cabo, who has been my biggest partner and cheerleader at United, who's here today, for being my partner in that. I think you can tell, and I hope that you do, and as you get to know me, I think you'll see this. Overall, what guides me is a really simple goal in life, and that's just to do good in the world, in whatever way that is, making every action count. I've served on the local school council at Haynes Elementary. I've volunteered for junior achievement for a time. I worked there too, although maybe it felt more like a volunteer job, I don't know. It's my first job at a nonprofit. And I work with friends and family to do good things in the community when we see it, because if you see it, you have to do something about it. I can't see, or I can't unsee certain things, and when I can't, I'm compelled to do something about it. Like many residents of the 11th Ward, I'm blessed with the support of a loving family and a supportive community. I've lived an entire life, and it's messy, but it's mine, and I own it, as we all should. It's because of my story that I think so many Chicagoans can relate to it. My drive that I believe that I'm the best suited to serve the 11th Ward as alderman. I know the 11th Ward aldermans are, excuse me, the aldermans, that's me. Not yet, not yet. That's going to be on Monday, hopefully. I know that the 11th Ward residents are looking for a leader that's transparent, accountable, and operates with integrity. I know this because I'm one of those residents. The 11th Ward demands as much from their leaders, and I will carry these values with me into this new role. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and move the 11th Ward in a new direction. Like the countless immigrants and laborers and families that have come before me, I can't wait to get to work to make the 11th Ward even better, better than it is today. Mayor Lightfoot and my new colleagues on the City Council, I look forward to working with you so that together we can improve the lives of our residents in this city. I promise to give it everything that I've got and to make a true impact in the 11th Ward and in this great city. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of your time.
I also want to acknowledge Alderman Michael Scott, who has joined us. I know that he and Nicole have known each other for some time and will also be a tremendous support to her as, God willing, and with the approval of the City Council, she becomes officially the next Alderman of the 11th Ward. We're happy to take your questions at this time.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Members of the media, Amanda and I will be bringing down the mics. 2 questions per reporter, and we'll start off with Michelle from the Sing Tao Daily. Go ahead, Michelle.
I would like to know when Nicole, the future 11th Ward Alderman, how you make our community more safe.
You want to take that? You heard the question?
Yes. I think I heard everything, and I think your question was, how am I going to make the community more safe? Yes. It's not a job that's done alone. I think first and foremost, I'm going to be meeting with everybody who plays a role in safety. That is including the commander of the police district, District 9, as well as streets and sanitations. We got to have good lights so that people are safe when they're walking at night, to making sure that garbage is picked up and out of the way so that there's a good neighborhood for people to walk around through and want to be around. So those are some of the first things that I'm going to do to address safety.
All right, Craig Wall, ABC 7.
Nicole, if we could, over here.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
There are some who,
Yeah, okay.
there are some who might wonder why you would leave such a good corporate job. And do you want this job on a permanent basis, or do you feel like you're here as a placeholder, perhaps?
Have you been talking to my mother or my kids?
Channeling it, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe you have. You know, it's a question that I've gotten a lot as I've talked to people about this journey that I embarked on. When I was asked the question, would you be interested in being considered on a list that we want to recommend to the mayor? I didn't immediately say no, and it surprised me a little bit. Because I do have this wonderful, amazing career that I love at United, where I know I'm making a difference every day. Our community, Chicago, the Asian American community, we're at a precipice right now with the ward remap, potentially giving us, for the first time ever, an Asian majority ward. And that's not a guarantee that someone that looks like me will be elected to that position. So when I looked and I looked around and asked about who else was being considered, because my first instinct was, well, who else is there? Could I get behind somebody and keep my fun, really meaningful corporate job? And the answer to that question was that there wasn't anybody that I felt like I could get behind and feel good about for this really important job at this really pivotal time in our history. And that's why I was called to serve in a very different sort of way. I'm drawn to opportunities where I feel like I can add value, and I believe wholeheartedly that I can make a difference for the 11th Ward that exists today and the 11th Ward of tomorrow.
Your intention would be to run again next year, is that correct?
My intention is to get confirmed on Monday. Do the job well, because if you don't do the job well, there's really no point in the second part of your question.
Mayor, if we could ask a question of you. Obviously, there's a Daly connection to this appointment, with her father having served as a deputy chief of staff, and you know the background as well. Any concerns how that may play with voters and with members of the city council?
No, none whatsoever. Nicole's her own person. That's how her parents raised her to be. She stands on her own 2 feet. She's here. She's going to be the one who gets the calls to fill the potholes, get the garbage collected, make sure the snow's being shoveled. That's the nuts and bolts of being an alderman, and I have every confidence that through her life experience, and particularly her experience in living in this ward, that she is ready. So nobody props you up when you step forward as an elected official. You got to stand on your own 2 feet. And Nicole is well-grounded and ready to take on the challenge. And as I said, I stand ready to support in any way I can, because her success with the success of the 11th Ward and the 11th Ward success is the success of our city.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Greg Pratt, Tribune.
Thank you. Congratulations to you, Ms. Lee. What will you? What will be the first thing you do if you get the confirmation?
I'm going to Disneyland. I'm just kidding. As if. The first thing, my top priorities, should I be so lucky to be confirmed on Monday, will be to understand what all's been going on in the ward and what hasn't been going on. First and foremost, my priority is to serve the residents of the 11th Ward. We have been without an alderman for a little bit more than a month now. And I'm confident that there are a lot of things that have been piling up that are going to need our attention.
And you know, the question was made to the mayor, and I would bring it to you about I would bring it to you, Nicole. Much has been made about your father and his time with Daly. And some of that, and you know, you talked about how you admired your dad and he was a role model for you. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on one second.
Sure.
I just want to kind of set the tone here for that. As I said, I wouldn't have picked Nicole if I didn't believe that she had the bona fides and the capability of doing this job. And I hope that in asking the question, you're not asking her to say anything other than, I love you, Dad. I love you, Mom. She loves her kids, her brother, and her family. This is about her life, her experience, and how she's going to do in leading this ward in this challenging time. So I hope the question is specific to her and not about anything else. She can answer for herself.
Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. I appreciate that very much. And I do love my father and my mother and my son and my family and so many of my friends who are here today. I saw my father serve the public for 30 years, driving the streets, taking the long way home, checking the lights, making sure stuff was picked up, taking calls at all hours of the night. That's what he did. And he was not an elected official. But he was somebody in the ward, in our community, that people could look to. And that's what I take from his modeling for me every day growing up. If somebody needed something, he was there to help out. When teenagers that he coached got into trouble or had needed some help or had a question, they didn't call their parents. They called my dad. Their parents were all working. So that's what that means to me. Thank you for the question.
Mary Ann Ahern, NBC.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I ask you a little bit about the process? Was there more, were you given several names? Were you given just one name? How did that all work?
Well, as I said, there were 27 people who applied. The committee looked at all of the 27, made a decision that they were going to interview 8, and out of that 8, 2 names came to me.
And then Heather Sharon is asking me to ask, could you talk about the delay? What took then so long for you to make the choice if you were given these names a while ago?
Well, it actually went pretty fast. I was just given the names late last week, and then sat down with the 2 candidates this week. So I think it's actually pretty fast. You know, we were mindful of the 60 days, but wanted to make sure that we took the time to, do our vetting. And I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to really sit down and talk to the folks that had been recommended by the committee. I didn't want to make a snap decision. This is really important. The 11th Ward has been without a full-time alderman now for 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. There's a lot of work to be done, and this is really important. I wanted to make, and this is, as you well know, my first aldermanic pick. And I wanted to make sure I took the time that was necessary to get to know the candidates, to talk to people who knew them. So I feel really, really confident. And as I said, I think this was actually pretty fast under the circumstances.
Ms. Lee, I just wonder, when you got the phone call, or perhaps it was in person, but what was your reaction? Was it kind of, oh God, be careful what I wish for? Or
I'm not going to lie, there was some of that, for sure. I can't say it because we're on camera and those aren't appropriate words for television. It was, holy cow, this is really happening. It was exhilarating and scary, and like I think I'm a little bit crazy, and I think you have to be to put yourself in this position, to put myself before all of you, to subject my family to some public scrutiny and all of this. And I believe it's all well worth it, because if we don't have leaders that are willing to step up and do the hard jobs, we shouldn't complain about what's going on in government. We just shouldn't.
Okay, go ahead. Can you please give us your name and outlet? Thank you.
Hi, Irene.
I'm Irene from Maneri Communications, and I'm actually an 11th Ward resident for the last few years. And want to ask you top 3, I heard the long speech, what are the top 3 priorities now? You've got 9, 10 months left. Top 3, 1, 2, 3 for the 11th Ward.
I've got a lot of priorities for the 11th Ward. I mentioned one earlier. First and foremost, get to know what's happening in the ward in terms of city services. I can't say that enough. Top of the list. Public safety is another one, and I want to make sure that we do everything that we can to ensure that every child here has great educational opportunities and that we don't lose more families to the suburbs because it's so difficult once kids get to a certain age to get to good quality schools. Thank you for the question.
Alex Snitkin, Daily Line.
Hi, Ms. Lee. Congratulations. You mentioned the ward remap. Both of the major proposals that are up right now would turn the 11th ward, as you mentioned, into a majority Asian American ward. The previous Alderman Thompson opposed that. He said it would divide neighborhoods by cutting part of Canaryville out of the ward and expanding it into McKinley Park. Could you just talk about why it is so important to have a majority Asian American constituency in the ward, or did Thompson have a point?
It's Alex, right? Yes. Nice to meet you. Thank you for the congratulations. I'm going to need a few minutes. I'm not quite in the job yet, so I'm going to beg a little bit of grace. There's a lot I'm going to have to learn and get to know my colleagues and understand about issues and what all is going on. It's too important a thing for me to just throw out an answer to you. I appreciate the question. Thank you.
That's a wrap. And then thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. You alluded to a potential gas tax holiday or some kind of policy change. We know the Finance Committee on Monday is scheduled to consider something having to do with the gas tax. Presumably, I mean, could you tell us, is that to be approved on Monday, and can you give us any details about what that'll be?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, and our team has been working diligently on a plan. But what I'll say is I think every Chicagoan who drives a car has had sticker shock with what we've seen as the incredible escalation in gas prices. I said this the other day, I'm old enough to remember gas prices being substantially under $1 a gallon, and I'm profoundly shocked by what we've seen just in the last couple of weeks, going up $1.50 and in some instances even more. I never thought I'd see in my lifetime gas prices for regular gas hovering around $5 a gallon for regular. So there's something going on here. We've got to do our part at the city to provide some relief for the people that are struggling. Not everybody can take the CTA. We encourage as many people as possible to take the CTA and other carbon-friendly modes of transportation. But the practical reality is we're a car city, and people have to drive to get to work, to get to school, to get to church, go to the groceries, and we've got to figure out a way that we can do our part to really provide some relief. And again, I'm going to encourage the Illinois Attorney General to look into this huge rapid escalation in gas prices. I'm very concerned about gas gouging, and I'm not accusing anyone. I don't know that for a fact, but it's worthy of the Attorney General to look at this because the escalation is really pricing people a lot out. I've talked to residents who are saying, I can't afford to fill up my tank. I'm riding on a quarter of a tank and then maybe I'll put a couple more dollars in. That's not the way people should have to live. And obviously it's not just gas prices. There's been an escalation in the price of groceries and other basic needs of our city. And that's why I think it's important for us to step up and do our part. As I said, the team is working diligently on a proposal, and once we've got that finalized, certainly we'll present it to the public, and obviously we need to socialize it with members of the City Council, get their input in, but all of us are hearing from residents all across the city, please help, and we've got to answer that cry.
And Mayor, we had a couple of reporters hiding in the back. Hannah, WBZ.
Hi, my first question is for Mayor Lightfoot. Did you get recommendations or consult with 11th Ward Committeeman John Daly on this choice?
I didn't get specific recommendations, but of course I consulted with the committeeman immediately after the vacancy was open. And I think his view is, and I don't need to speak for him, is we just need to make sure that we've got somebody who represents the diversity of the neighborhood and is really going to be a champion for these communities.
Great. And my second question is for Nicole.
Hello.
Hi, congratulations.
Thank you.
Had you ever considered running for alderman before now, or was it the vacancy that made you first consider it?
I have never, before this, had never, I have not thought about running for alderman before. I love doing the work that I do in the corporate sector. I've carved out a really amazing career for myself where I've been able to make a difference. And this is just a way for me to serve my community, my 11th Ward community, the Asian American community here in Chicago, in a very different way and much more directly. And it was not a small decision for me. I have a really great career and pays a little bit more than this job does. And my kids and I are probably going to miss those flight benefits. Yes, you, Mayor, you understand this. But I think it's going to be worth it. I think it's going to be worth it because, as I said, and I've shared with people throughout this process, we need more people that are willing to step up and take roles like these. We can't, as an Asian American community, want political power and be unwilling to produce and inspire young people. I'm going to count myself as young. Inspire young people to take these chances and maybe not make the most money ever, but really make the most difference.
That's great.
All the way to the back, WBBM.
Craig, you're hiding in the back.
Yeah, I need longer wires.
It's so weird to see your face because I usually just hear your voice.
Well, I'm glad you listened. Thank
Hello.
you.
Sorry,
this is kind of a follow-up to what Alex asked, but hopefully in a different way. And that is because there is so much tension about the remap process. There are people who have spoken out, mostly from Canaryville, who say, we're afraid our community is going to be left out. How do you reach out when everybody's talking about this as the predominantly Asian ward? How do you reach out to the rest of the ward and make them feel included?
I got to get out there, Craig. And just to be fair, the Canaryville is not, there are many Chinese Americans there, including my own family, who live in Canaryville. Canaryville is not the Canaryville of the 90s. It's very different now, and I care deeply for everybody that is in that community. And what I'm going to be doing is just good old-fashioned getting around and meeting people, listening, hearing their concerns about what every issue impacting them might be, whether it's safety or schools, and how this remap might impact their lives. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you.